they might do something as simple as a voice search or even just a normal Google search. You had suggested looking into having an FAQ page. I had never had an FAQ page.
From the creation of an FAQ page for your website to several resources that I'm hoping you'll find helpful as you prepare your business for voice, this is episode 25 of Agile Digital Business Podcast. My name is Vickie Maris. I am really glad you are here. Let's get underway with this episode of the show.
Welcome in for this episode of the Agile Digital Business Podcast with host Vickie Maris.
Towards the end of this episode, I'm going to play a very short interview that I had with Kovey, who was a participant in an executive education program where I was delivering a talk about how businesses can be preparing for the voice platform. One of the things that Bobby pulled out of that particular talk was my suggestion of the FAQ page. I have heard other marketers in podcasts that I listen to talk about how we can include an FAQ page on our website if we don't have one already, or revisit the FAQ page and make sure that the questions on the FAQ page and the way we have responded to those questions for our customers align with how our customers are actually asking those questions. That's a step that we can take to help us prepare for how our customers are asking their digital voice assistants for information about our businesses. You'll hear Bobby and I talk about that in a little bit more detail at the end of this episode. Before we get to that, I wanted to provide you with a few resources that I have found helpful as I personally am studying voice. I make sure to spend a little bit of time every day on this subject. And as I'm learning about the things that I would like to be changing in my business to make my content more discoverable for the people who are looking for my business, I like to be sharing what I'm learning here with you on the podcast. So the upcoming few resources are a few highlights of what I've been either listening to or YouTube videos I've been watching or books that I've been considering purchasing. I want to let you know about them. One of the first resources I want to share with you is a podcast episode from the show This Week in Voice. It's the episode dated November 8th, 2019. It's Season 4, Episode 10, and the title is More Than Just Weather and Music, 200 Ways to Use Alexa. That also happens to be the title of the book by Bradley Metrock. He goes through a number of the Amazon Alexa skills that are available. In that particular podcast episode, he features some, but not all, of the skills that he has listed in his book. I took a few notes on some of the ones that stood out for me. I'm going to share them with you here, but what I really want you to do is go listen to that episode so you can hear the list in its entirety, and you'll hear Bradley's commentary about each of the skills that he mentions in that particular episode of his show. Some of the skills that he highlights are ones that have been developed by third-party developers. Others are native to the device itself. Let's start with the How You Remind Me skill. You can get to that Alexa app through the main menu, and you navigate to Reminders. I think the example that Bradley used was if you had, for instance, a medication that you needed to give to your pet on a once every 3 months basis, you could ask Alexa to set that reminder for you. Another skill he mentioned is called Hoopla Digital. With that particular skill, you can ask Alexa to play music and audiobooks that you've borrowed from your local library. If you are a PayPal user, there is an Alexa skill where you can send and receive money simply with the power of your voice. Bradley talks about one of the built-in functions that you can enable. That's the recognized voices feature. If there are several individuals in your household that use your Alexa, let's say one person would like to ask Alexa to place a call, Alexa is going to recognize whose voice it is and refer to the contacts list for that particular person. There's an Alexa skill called Tune In Live. That allows you to listen to live sporting events, also talk stations, and much more. Tune In is also how you can play the latest episode of a podcast that you would like to hear. If you would like to play the most recent episode of this podcast, Agile Digital Business, you would simply ask Alexa, "Alexa, play the most recent episode of Agile Digital Business." Headspace is another Alexa skill that Bradley mentions in his book and also in the podcast episode of November 8th, 2019. This particular Alexa skill is a guided meditation skill. It has been given an award by CNBC as one of the Alexa skills that will make you smarter. How about the SAT Word of the Day skill? In Bradley's episode, I also learned that you can manage your voice recordings right through your Alexa device. I already was aware that you could go out to your Amazon account and manage the recordings or delete the recordings of your voice through your account, but you also can do it right there at the device itself and delete your voice recordings with a request from your voice. One Bus Away is an Alexa skill for helping you know bus arrival times. On Your Guard is a security feature. McDonald's Apply-Through. I wasn't aware until hearing this episode of This Week in Voice that you could apply for a job at McDonald's right through your Amazon Alexa. If you like to listen to music through Apple Music, you can interact with your Apple Music account through your Amazon Alexa. There is an Instagram Stories Alexa skill. There is a built-in function that allows you to change the wake word for your Amazon Alexa device. And this is not one that was mentioned in the episode I'm referring to of This Week in Voice, but would like to remind you that I have an Alexa skill for this podcast. I set up a flash briefing. You might recall, if you've been listening to this show, Kane Sims and I were talking about flash briefings in the episode just prior to this one, episode 24. Kane is with VUX World podcast. If you would like to hear the flash briefing that I've set up for this podcast, you can enable that skill in your Alexa app and add the flash briefing, which is called Agile Digital Business. So that was just a little sampling of some of the Alexa skills that Bradley highlighted in his episode in his podcast from November 8th, 2019. I encourage you to take a listen. And I want to give a shout out to Bradley for writing that book. Thank you for doing that. Before I move away from the listing of Amazon Alexa skills, I also want to tell you about an Amazon skill that's been created by my friend and colleague, Len Clark. Len and I first connected in the social media platform LinkedIn. Len is all about Notre Dame sports, and he has created an Alexa skill called Notre Dame Football. So Scott and I have enabled that particular skill, and you can get all kinds of updates about Notre Dame sports and game day weather. There are a variety of options that Len has built into that skill. So that might be another one you would want to check out. I also want to let you know about a couple of books that I have found very interesting. I like to always be reading something. Right now I have 2 books going. I'm about to finish up one by the comic strip artist Scot Adams, who is the creator of Dilbert. The book of his that I've been reading is How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. I have really enjoyed reading about Scot's story. Scot shares a lot of advice from his life as he was moving out of corporate America and into his life as a creative entrepreneur. There is a quote from Time on the lower part of the front cover that says, quote, "Some of the simplest, most profound advice," end quote. And I agree with that. It is a really great book. The other book I have just started is called Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. It's by Max Tegmark. He's a professor at MIT. This is a book that several of us are reading in the AI and Ethics Book Club at the University of Notre Dame. I have just gotten through the first chapter this morning, and I can tell this is going to be a very interesting read, very eye-opening. I'm certain it's going to stimulate some very interesting discussion among our book club members. I'm looking forward to when we meet next month, so I'll probably come back and tell you a little bit more about that after we've had our book club meeting. The next resource I want to share with you is a video that I've been watching. It's a recording of Voice Summit 2019. This is the video for July 24th, 2019, from the conference. It opens with Pete Erickson speaking from the stage. He is the co-founder of MoDev and creator of Voice Summit. And then he introduces James, also known as JP Poulter, who is the MC on the main stage for that day. JP was formerly with Lego Group and is now the CEO and co-founder of Vixen Labs. It's a voice consultancy and design studio. I encourage you to watch JP's session at the start of that video. It's at the time code of 2:59 when he begins his session. He provides 3 insights for the voice-first industry, and I'm just going to provide a real brief summary here. I really do want you to go watch the video. One of the points that JP shares is that we're not quite at the end of the beginning of the voice platform in the voice-first industry. What he's meaning there is we're no longer in just R&D or just in the innovation lab. It's beyond that point, but we're certainly not as far along as we're going to be in the very near future. We are moving from consumption to conversation. Another point that JP shared, and I'll quote him here, we need to work even harder to help people understand what these experiences are and how they work, end quote. He's talking about the voice experiences that brands are creating and making available via digital voice assistants. He also mentions that marketing is the thing that we need to be increasing drastically so that consumers know our voice experiences exist and they're out there and can be a great way to interface with our companies. A third point he made was that users are consuming more audio than ever. I quote him as saying, "The audio revolution is happening." A couple of other things that JP mentioned. This one I thought was very interesting, that we have a challenge, that we want to help consumers navigate the complexity, and we don't want to create the type of battle that exists between the iOS and the Android platforms with our smartphones. What I took away from that is that he would like to see all of us in the voice industry helping consumers navigate that complexity and kind of fight off that ecosystem lock-in where the way we are today, where we're either very strong towards an iOS device, or we're very strong towards wanting to use an Android device. I've heard JP and others comment that if we can find some common ground in this ecosystem, we'll move a lot farther along more quickly in this industry. We also want to get to the point where we're moving beyond the low-hanging fruit and really delivering high-quality experiences. Another point that he made that I have written down for you is that as we're shifting towards a voice-first mindset for brands, that we don't treat it just as a marketing add-on, that it's not something we hope our marketing team will just kind of tack on to the end of the marketing strategy that's been planned out for the year. It's going to be really important that we figure out how our consumers want to be using voice to interact with our organizations and where voice lies within the company itself. Who's in charge of it? How does it weave in and among all the various facets of our organization? When he was sharing that, I was thinking about what it was like when the internet was coming into play and companies were making that decision that they needed to have a website. Where was that conversation taking place? Did it exist in the marketing department, or was it throughout the organization? And think of how your company's website today touches every part of your organization. I think that's how voice is going to be in the very near future. It's going to be important throughout the whole ecosystem of your organization. Whenever I give a talk or when I'm writing books or writing songs, I really value the feedback that I get, and I take it to heart. I look at the evaluation comments after a talk. I look at what people are posting in Amazon after I've published a book. Scot and I, as musicians, pay attention to what our audience members are saying resonates with them in terms of the music that we share from the stage. A couple months ago, when I was giving a talk about voice and how businesses can be preparing for voice, I got a comment in an evaluation that the person was very interested in the conversation we were having as a group, but he was wishing we had had time to go deeper about security and identity in the voice world. So with that in mind, I wanted to share another part of this video from the Voice Summit conference. If you also have some interest in security and identity, I thought you might appreciate this section of the video. So if you go forward to the time code of 38 minutes and 57 seconds in, you will see a conversation on the stage between Scot Kortner, who is a VP with T. Rowe Price, with Vijay Balasubramanian. He's the CEO and founder of Pindrop. The two of them have some very interesting conversation about security and authentication with voice. Vijay is asking Scot a number of questions that were prepared ahead of time. Scot has been working in voice since the 1990s. I think you will appreciate the conversation that those two have in the video. And before we get to the interview with Bobby Kovey, I want to provide one more resource for you. I have not yet had opportunity to read this book, but I am really looking forward to it. It is written by my colleagues, Susan and Scot Westwater of Pragmatic Digital. The title of their new book is Voice Strategy: Creating Useful and Usable Voice Experiences. As I was looking the book up in Amazon and reading some of the pages that are shared there on the book's page in Amazon, I found this quote and I wanted to share it with you. So this is from Scot and Susan's book. Quote, "Voice is poised to become the first point of content for consumer attention. Instead of competing for eyeballs, marketers and advertisers will be competing for their ears." End quote. I'm looking forward to having Susan and Scot as guests on the show. I will ask more about the content of their book when I get to interview them for the show. My understanding from what I have read of what they've posted in LinkedIn is that they wrote this book by recording their voice rather than typing it out. I think that is a really neat way to write a book, and I think they have me convinced that that's how I'm going to try writing my next book. If you were interested in recording your next book rather than typing it out, you could use a service like rev.com to get your recording transcribed. You could also do that if you were preparing content for a talk that you were giving. I've done that before when I was recording into the voice memo app on my phone. Making transcripts available of this podcast, Agile Digital Business, is one of the steps that I'm planning to take for the future. So I will very likely be using a service like that one to get my audio files transcribed. I want to make them available for download from the show notes page for each particular episode. And having a transcription also will create a file that I can use to have a caption file to upload to the YouTube video that comes out each time I publish a new episode of the show. So if you happen to like to listen to the audio via YouTube, you can do that for each episode of this podcast, Agile Digital Business. Well, I hope you find that list of resources helpful. If you have opportunity to explore any of those a little bit further, I would love for you to leave a voicemail for me using the SpeakPipe widget on my website. It's out at the contact form at vickiemaris.com/contact. You can also connect with me out there in the social channels. I use LinkedIn quite a bit and Twitter. You can find me Vickie Maris is my handle in those two locations. If you're a Facebook user, my business page in Facebook is VJ Maris, Maris is the last name. If you're posting about something that resonated with you from this podcast episode, or if you have a question you'd like to post, if you include the hashtag Agile Digital Biz, I search on that hashtag on a regular basis so that I can more easily find the things that you are posting about the show. It's really helpful to know what it is that's resonating with you, what's helping you advance your business as you prepare for voice. All right, now I'm going to take you to that interview with Bobby Kovey of the Credo Company. Bobby was a participant in the Certificate in Executive Management program at the University of Notre Dame. That's a 4-module program that takes place over the course of the year. Modules are in March, May, September, and November. The module in September is called Leading the Strategic Enterprise. I teach a session in that particular module, and in this past year, I was leading a session about voice-first searches and how businesses can be preparing for voice-first. During one of the breaks in the November module, Bobby was sharing with me some of the takeaways that he had gleaned from that September module, and I asked him if he would mind doing a short interview with me. We captured this audio on my iPhone. I had an external mic plugged in, and we were simply handing the mic back and forth to each other, so you'll hear a difference in the audio. I'm grateful to be able to have had this conversation with Bobby and that I can share it here with you on the show. I'm here with Bobby Kovey, who was a participant in a program where I was doing the presentation about voice search, and we were in some conversations as a group about voice search marketing and things we can do as businesses to prepare. And Bobby has agreed to share some things that he's put into play at his company based on what we were all talking about as a group. Bobby, would you share that with me so that my listeners can hear what you have been doing at your company, the Credo Company in Ohio?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. First and foremost, the program for those professionals who have a busy lifestyle, are not able to commit to a full-on MBA, executive MBA, online MBA. This is a great supplement to that or substitute for it. There's lots of value. One of my big concerns was wondering if a program was going to be full of intangible fluff or theoretical conversations and presentations. This has been a great mix of tangible knowledge, applicable knowledge, things that you can use that have been proven best practices, that you can walk away with knowledge from proven experiences. One of those came in your presentation, and while we are lectured about very large business concepts, sometimes the simplest, smallest things can make an impact. And one example is, Vickie, that I'm happy to share with you, is it had never occurred to me to put on my website, which is a consulting service. We are in the government relations, business development, consulting services business. We help companies navigate the regulatory environment, navigate the legislative environment, do business with the state in the form of procurement. It's not always a clear map on how to do that. There aren't tricks of the trade. There's just faster, more efficient ways to do it, and they're all founded upon relationships. That's not always a measured business. It's not a commodity. There's not an operational efficiency to it. There's just knowledge and skills that you have to develop. And again, it's all founded on relationships. Well, being discovered is a hard thing to do because you have to have a relationship that turns into a referral to get a client. However, sometimes when there is a threat and a company needs to hire a consulting firm in Ohio, for my purposes, they might do something as simple as a voice search or even just a normal Google search. You had suggested looking into having an FAQ page. I had never had an FAQ page. To me, that sounded like explaining what government relations or lobbyists do for dummies, which sometimes are very helpful manuals, but in my business, it's you either know you need government relations or you don't. Well, having a FAQ page serves as an indirect marketing source for me. For instance, sometimes companies may just search effective lobbyists, Ohio. Well, if I'm able to put that in the form of an FAQ portion of my page, and I discover one client out of that, well, this class has just paid for itself. So it's an immediate return on investment.
Thank you, Bobby. I really appreciate the example. And I'm doing the same thing for my website with getting that FAQ page built and trying to include responses that would be responding to the way my potential customers of my business might be asking those questions. It's I think there's still like a lot out there unknowns about how the digital voice assistants are responding, but they're learning quickly. So I'm looking forward to talking to you again about it and see if you see a result like that. That would be awesome for your yes. So thank you for taking that time, and thanks for being a part of the program. I really appreciate that as well. It's been fun to have your input in the many conversations we've had throughout the 4 modules.
Thank you for having this opportunity, because not many executive ed programs offer this type of a program. So this is great.
Bobby, I really do appreciate you sharing your input. I am looking forward to hearing from you that the addition of that FAQ page was helpful to a client who is seeking the services of your company. Thank you for spending your time with me here in episode 25 of Agile Digital Business. My name is Vickie Maris, creator and host of this podcast. I would love for you to share it with a friend or a colleague. All right, are you ready to join me as we go out and teach, inspire, and connect?